Yeah.
So with this like fear about the future of the Patriots, let's just jump to wide receivers. We're going to skip running back for now, and let's talk about N'Keal Harry at the 101. Well, not 101, but the first ranked wide receiver and the second overall pick in our draft. With a lot of question marks about the future of the Patriots long term, N'Keal Harry still remains the top wide receiver in this draft class. And explain to me why that is.
Again, I think you have a placement issue, right? Because he's not the best pure route runner. He's not the best separator. That's Marquise Brown. He's not the fastest vertical route guy. That would be somebody like, or shiftiest guy like an Andy Isabella. Like, but he has skills, and he had good placement. So yeah, I bet if we're going into it talking about post draft, it's placement. Pre draft, a lot of people had him way lower, right? So they had him at 5, wide receiver 5. So I'm not as high on N'Keal Harry now as I kind of was then. I was trying to be honest and keeping my rankings like where they've been. I've been souring a little bit on it, but I don't know. I think it's just a good combination. He's got the skills. He's got good placement. I question a little bit that they don't have a strong wide receiver room there, but it's not as dire as like it would be in some other situations. Like for example, when we get to DK Metcalf, especially with Doug Baldwin's exit from the NFL. So it's kind of that there's some uncertainty there, and I think the Patriots also are really really difficult to predict in what they do because they're super shifty. So that's for me is the question. But on paper, he's a sensible first pick.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, why we all have him at number 1, right? The Patriots don't really have wide receivers, and they drafted this guy pretty high. So it's kind of like he's in a good offense, and he's most likely going to start. So you can probably put him in your lineup and be fine, right? Like I think that's the whole reason why he's number 1.
Yeah, he's going to get you some stats this year. I think that's probably the most important part about drafting him because there are aside from DK Metcalf, there are very few clear opportunities to playing time in this wide receiver draft class, N'Keal being one of them and Metcalf being the other. I think the other thing is when we're trying to like split hairs and like parse out these things, and I bring up this question about the Patriots' future, it's like, well, it doesn't matter because he is just a clear cut best prospect in all these other regards, in shortness to opportunity, in all of the counting stats that he had in college, his age. He's just a stud across the board.
Yeah.
The next question.
But I wanted to just add one more thing to that because he said really makes sense. It's like before when you're talking about pro day, combine, pre-draft, it's all about technical stats and all this stuff. And it gets dwarfed by the fact when you see the Patriots like pick in round 1 a wide receiver, that just speaks volumes about their intent.
Right.
They're not going to waste draft capital. So I think what he said is the most salient point that's been made is just like that's a good thing to go with. Like that's smart.
So speaking of salient points, you're in the camp of DK Metcalf being the number 2 wide receiver in this class. And Guy and I both have him ranked outside our top 4. Now, tell me why you're so high on DK Metcalf.
Simply because of what happened. So it's very similar to the Josh Jacobs situation with Isaiah Crowell. It was a perfect storm of opportunity. And so it's really about, so I am the first to admit DK Metcalf is an extremely incomplete and underdeveloped receiver, but nobody's going to argue he's a physical freak and specimen, and he's got the capabilities. And I think that, so you have Tyler Lockett is also injury prone, I think, in my opinion. And there's a lot of concerns there. He's also really undersized. And I just think that now the one, and I'm actually talking out both sides of my mouth a little bit here because I'm a huge David Moore fan. Okay, I'm like all in on him, but it's not clear that Seattle is going to commit to him at that level that they should probably. If I was telling Seattle what to do, I would put them all in more touches to David Moore and not put DK Metcalf in. But I think that they're going to give DK Metcalf a strong opportunity. So that's more what it is. It's not what I think should happen. It's what I think will happen.
And here's the thing about DK Metcalf too is like he landed in Seattle, which is a pretty good spot because they don't really have that many wide receivers. And the way I rank players, I normally put them in tiers. Like I group together people where I have they're pretty close. You know, you can like maybe one guy is slightly better than the other, but like I look at them as a group and see I'd be fine with any of these guys. Um, so my tier one is N'Keal Harry by himself when it comes to wide receiver. My tier two was Paris Campbell and McCole Hardman. Um, but DK Metcalf and Marquise Brown have the same problem, and it's in my eyes, and it's the reason why they're in tier three instead of tier two for me. Is Seattle runs the ball way too much.
Yep.
And the Ravens run the ball way too much. It's like I can see games where DK Metcalf gets maybe 3 targets.
Yeah.
You know, like that's rough because they run the ball so much. I kind of feel like he can be hit like a big boom or bust player, and it's hard to. And there's who's really going to develop him into a real wide receiver? We all talk about he's just like a weird guy, right? He just runs deep routes or slants. Like that's all he does.
Like his route tree will definitely be expanding this summer.
Yeah, it's like who's there to coach him up? I don't know.
More than just coaching too. He needs some agility training, like in a serious
side to side lateral motion. Yeah.
His lateral quickness seems to be lacking, at least from the way that he tested at the combine, which is, to me, is a bit of a red flag for a receiver. It hasn't like really been proven out that it's a big sticking point for receiver success in the NFL.
That's right.
But there is a fear that it makes him a one-dimensional player. And that is a little fearful for me. So when I'm thinking about the ranking, I am considering my own team, which is interesting. And when we take our rankings into consideration, and when I have a bunch of already young wide receivers, I don't really need a plug and play. I've got some decent production there. I put Metcalf lower on my ranking because although his quickness to opportunity is definitely higher than some of the other projects that you might consider in this class, like Campbell, like Brown, the way I painted the picture was who is going to be in 4 years from now signing the most massive contract? Like which wide receiver is going to be like inking that like $17 million a year deal? And that's why I put Debo and Campbell and who else? And Isabella even ahead of them. Although I don't see Isabella actually making that much money, and we'll get to him in a minute. So Nicole Hardman on our boards, it's a little lower. You had him ranked 3rd overall. You drafted him with your pick at the, what was it, 112?
Yeah, and I personally think I got a giant steal.
So why are you so high on Nicole Hardman?
And it's simply because, like, I talk bad about other players because of what team they're on. You know what I mean? It's the same kind of thing. I'll talk good about a player because of what team he's on. He's in the Chiefs, and I don't think Tyreek Hill will play another down for the Chiefs. You get me a guy who Andy Reid loves to get tricky with his plays. You know, he's probably going to get some handoffs. He's going to get some deep bombs. I just think he's going to have a lot of opportunity in an extremely high-powered offense. And that's why he's in my tier 2 player. It's strictly you have a super fast guy who's going to be involved in the Chiefs offense, and I want that.
And you would take that above any of these other prospects. That is how it worked out.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, like my tier 2 was Paris Campbell and McCole Hardman, and I stick by it. I think he's going to be great for fantasy.
I get and respect that choice, and there are, although it's more outlier, there are some fantasy analysts that would agree with Guy on this, that are going that way. It's definitely not the majority, but the counter argument is that he's got a limited skill set. He's a bit of a one-trick pony, or 1.5 trick pony. That's the other side of it. The obvious argument for is that he's a direct Tyreek Hill replacement, and that's what they're going to plug him in, and he's going to get all those touches, and there's a good opportunity, and inarguably great offense, great coach, except in the playoffs, Andy Reid. Okay, so that all makes sense to me, and I think it's a good gamble. I mean, I don't think it's a huge gamble, so I think it's a smart play, and I get it, and I can't really argue. You can't really. Only time will tell, right?
Mm-hmm. So opportunity is obviously a huge part of where we're really ranking these players. So and let me tell you, I'm going to give you a contrived dichotomy right here. And tell me if you know the difference. McCole Hardman on one side is the player, and then I'll give you the stats, but not the player's name on the other. Age 21, age 22, drafted 224, drafted 230. College dominator, McCole Hardman of 18.7%. This other player, 52.2%, the amount of snaps and shares of targets that they saw in college. Breakout age, 19. Breakout age, 19. Speed score, which is their 40 times their weight, more or less. 102, a speed score 103. Burst score is their agility. We don't need to get into that. Who is the player on the right that looks?
Andy Isabella.
He knows. So Andy Isabella is the white version of McCole Hardman.
Well, and he went to my former alma mater, my first year alma mater, UMass Amherst. So that's
wow, that's funny.
And not a lot of good shit has come out of UMass Amherst, so that was kind of cool. I went to Syracuse after that, so that's really what I call my alma mater. But yeah, so no, I think like those to me were kissing cousins. Like they were really, really close. Andy Isabella is really intriguing on paper. Speed, agility. He reminds me of like kind of like a Julian Edelman type, where just shifty and fast, and he's got elements of several different sort of profile NFL wide receivers that are successful. So yeah, I think like that I wouldn't have been surprised to see Andy Isabella go. I think it's just the way the board fell, right, in terms of need. If for whatever reason Andy Reid, whoever's making the decisions over there, saw that McCole Hardman was the perfect choice for them, so that's what they did. So that's just the way the board fell.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that they took Hardman where they did, but they clearly valued something about him. But Isabella, being a comparable athlete, is really dropped down both of your rankings. Now, why is it so low on Isabella for a guy who is just as much of a freak athlete?
So yeah, he's a freak athlete, right? But I'm not touching anybody on the Cardinals. They're going to be running like 5 wide receiver sets. Who's going to get the ball every game? Do we even know if Andy Isabella is going to start? Like, I don't know how many touches he's going to get. I don't want to touch anybody on the Cardinals right now. How many wide receivers did they draft this year? 2, 3?
Yeah,
3.
And they,
Bella.
yeah, and then they already had some young, promising guys from last year. Who's going to get the ball there? The only player that I want on that offense is Kyler Murray and DJ. That's the wide receivers are all a coin flip to me. I don't know who to trust.
The counter, or not the counter, to use your previous argument in the previous scenario, though, when we were talking earlier, it was like where they drafted pretty high. So that's a lot of draft capital in round 2
right,
to spend on him. So if we look at that, like, are they going to use that draft capital and then not employ it, pretty immediately? That's the other side of that.
Yeah, but one side is like draft capital for a good team, and the other one is draft capital for a crappy team.
Yeah, point taken. No argument there. And I know that we skipped between. We went from 24 to 30, and in between that, we had Paris Campbell going to the Colts. So I'd like to talk about him if we can too.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's go.
Okay, because we all agreed, so I guess there isn't much dissension here. But I just wanted to say, like, the Colts were super psyched. Frank Reich like peed his pants visibly on camera, pretty much. Like, so that says a lot about, like, they were super excited, jumping out of their chairs about getting him. So I think it's pretty safe to say. And obviously the Colts, it's the freaking Colts, right?
Yeah.
Frank Reich, Super Bowl winner, and then you got Andrew Luck as a quarterback, and there's this air raid time, everything. The runway's lit on that one. So yeah, that's a good call. But we're not arguing on that one.
I mean, you could argue against Campbell. I think the biggest argument against him is that his yards per reception and yards per target in college was super low. Well, not yards per reception, but his yards
catch.
Yeah, his average depth of target is somewhere around like 6 yards. So basically, the way that he's used is like a lot of NFL receivers actually, is in and around the line of scrimmage and in the short areas of the field. So he's running drags and these curls and a lot of like short. He's not really a deep threat kind of guy. Never has been, at least not in college. So when we're projecting him out into next the phase of his career, it's like, well, you're making a big leap to say that now he's going to be this intermediate type guy. A lot of people mocked him like to T.Y. Hilton, mostly because of the athleticism, but he seemed actually more like he's a former running back, which is what a lot of people in the Colts war room actually valued about him, was his ability to instinctually run like a running back. So you're going to see a lot of screens and a lot of kind of short stuff with him, maybe like in that Taylor Gabriel-esque life, and maybe even as a slot player, which to me, I love slot NFL players. So I guess it's just there's a huge upside for him, but there's also kind of a downside in that role that he may end up filling.
I think it's kind of like we know he's going to get used in a higher powered offense. I think he's going to have plays designed specifically for him. Like they will do screens specifically for him. They will do the trick plays, the toss plays, like where they will hand him the ball. I'm pretty sure that they will pull some of those. Like he's going to be used this year and in a good offense. So, if T.Y. Hilton ends up retiring or gets injured like he always, Paris Campbell will be there to step up into that role too. So,
yeah. One other thing I want to say back on Mecole Hardman 1 second too is we didn't mention is his ball return ability. That was another benefit to him.
Yeah, but we don't get points for return yards.
Oh yeah, you're right but I'm talking about from the team why they chose him.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, actually there is some stat that projects receiver success based on their ability to generate special teams returns. Like it says something about their athleticism and their ability at the next level if they're really good at that phase of the game. Odell Beckham was an awesome return specialist, and
that's an interesting data point to use. That's cool. I've never heard that one.
Yeah,
there are some random ass stats that really end up tracking directly with success in the NFL.
Yeah, it kind of just says like, oh, this dude's an alpha in an elite competition.
You can't fake that shit, right? You cannot fake that.
Yeah.
Can't skate.
We don't need to keep talking about wide receivers anymore. Deontay Johnson was the only one I really wanted to highlight, I guess. But there are plenty of other things we can talk about with running backs. So why don't we just run up there?
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing about Jalen Hurd, which is like I was super psyched to get him, and it's going to be interesting because they're actually going to develop him as a move tight end. So he's like this hybrid wide receiver. He played running back as well in high school and college. And he's also big enough he's got the size of a tight end. So he's like this freakish multi-dimensional athlete who can has running back history. And anyway, so he's going to be really interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Well, here's actually one other thing I'm seeing here is this Emmanuel Hall thing where Guy and I didn't even have him on our boards, and you have him ranked above Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
Who's Emmanuel Hall?
Yeah, no, he's a sleeper. Yeah, so he's a sleeper. I think you're going to hear about him. It's like Bruce Anderson, who I got sniped on. I would have taken him over McLaurin, but yeah, I just think these are guys that I just been following and I just happen to just think good things about. They're way under the radar though, so there isn't even the amount of sort of analyst speak around it and a lot of the same number of articles and all that. So we'll see. It's like a long shot dark horse for me.
Yeah, I guess my question becomes, would you really take him above Deontay Johnson given that Deontay Johnson was drafted in the second round and Emmanuel Hall was not drafted at all?
Let's see. Did I really have him? Let me look at that again. Did I have him there above him?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There was something I really liked about him that I put him there, but I'm going to be really honest that I kind of like past quarterback 3. I was not as interested. I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in these guys. And I'm not going to question the intelligence of any team out there, but I didn't see anything that made it right. And I was corroborating multiple data points across like different analysts, different podcasts and everything. And so I had like a sort of a cream rising thing where something would float into my awareness, and then I would do deeper research at that point. And there wasn't anything to make me really be super excited about Deontay Johnson. That's what it was. I could have missed that, but nothing. He never, in any of the water coolers that I hang around, I didn't get excited. I may end up being wrong.
Guy, can you give me a reason why you would draft Deontay Johnson ahead of Andy Isabella, perhaps?
Yeah, it's because I don't want to touch anyone in Arizona Cardinals.
All right, never mind. The other guys.
So I gotta say, so you're Cliff Kingsbury. What's your thoughts? Like, are you just like they're gonna suck as bad as last year, or are you not? You're just not a believer.
It's not that I'm not a believer. I think the air raid has a lot of potential in the NFL. I'm not gonna lie. I think it could be good. It's just the problem is the ball is going to get spread around to so many different players. The only people that are going to benefit from it is the quarterback and the running back, because you just don't know who's going to get the ball.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see. That one's really hard to project.
Since we're in a dynasty league and Fitzgerald's getting old, I don't know. There's another thing happening there too, right? It's like maybe a couple years down the road. But if we're talking about win now scenarios, yeah. That's a valid point.
Yeah, someone's going to rise to the top, but they still have Christian Kirk from last year. They drafted in the third round. Like, there's a lot of other investments.
Christian Kirk, and who's that other kid? That's
who's on the depth chart?
He's on my team. Trent Sherfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he showed up last year. He was getting a lot of. There was a couple of games where he had 80% of snaps, and he was performing in those games. I played him in the finals, and he gave me 12 points in the finals or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
he's off my radar screen.
Yeah. So basically, there's 7 wide receivers that are going to have some opportunity to maybe break out in that offense. But for now, we're keeping it pretty much at arm's length.